Welcome back to the Talkoffame podcast. I'm Kylie Montigney. Today I'm introducing you to Bill Corcoran Jr. Bill's an award-winning interpreter, podcaster, and media personality. He's the founder and CEO of Honest Stacks, a full-service new media company that produces globally recognized episodic content and emerging online channel solutions to help businesses and individuals scale their influence. Bill successfully turned his podcast side hustle into a six-figure business while maintaining a full-time day job, investing in real estate, and balancing family life as a devoted husband and father. His popular business and entrepreneurship podcast, Honest Stacks with Bill Corcoran Jr., has been listened to more than 1 million times around the globe in 37 plus countries and all seven continents. The show is listed on Amazon Music's top 20 list of Better Businesses podcasts, alongside notable shows like How Do I Build This, Masters of Scale, The Diary of a CEO, and has been featured in over 375 media outlets worldwide. Welcome to the show, Bill. It literally is so great to have a fellow 570 person on the podcast. So it's literally
Yeah.
lovely to have you on today.
Yeah, Kylie, thank you for having me, first of all. And as I was saying before we started, I have a great appreciation for what you do. As I, am doing something similar to you, and I know how much work goes into doing what you do. And for as young as you are, you have an amazing drive and a talent and ambition to keep doing what you're doing. And like I said before, you've made it really far, and you've made it a lot further than most people. So congrats. And anytime I get the opportunity to be on somebody else's podcast, I enjoy sometimes being on this side of the mic because, as you know, I've done a few hundred episodes where I'm on your side asking all the questions. So something it's easier sometimes just to show up and sit here and not have to do all the prep work or all the work afterwards either. So.
Oh, I know. It's a lot of work, honestly, as you know, you understand it, where it's like you just edit it, ask questions. I'd much rather be on the other side where you are now than where I am, just because it's so much less stress and you
Right?
don't have to
Yeah.
edit and everything afterwards.
Yep.
Trust me, like if anyone is not a podcaster, then you don't know how much prep it is. Like figuring out questions, research, like it literally takes hours out your day and your schedule, especially if you're like a full-time job or something. It's literally like hard work, and sometimes you don't even have time for it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It could be a lot, and I think a few hours is an understatement. And as you know, like there's just so much that goes into it.
It is. And it's honestly, it always depends on the day. I am sure you know, depending on the episode. Like sometimes whenever I don't have a recording, I'm always saying to myself, it's honestly a thrill. Like whenever I don't have to record it, as much as I love what I do, sometimes I'm just like, I just don't want to edit as much
It's a
time
nice
as
break
I
sometimes,
do.
right? Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes when you get that break, you're like, oh, I can breathe now.
I know, like the less stress you have to do, and even though you might work your full-time job or something, like, at least you're getting paid for it, not having to think about the other stuff you have to do. This is me literally every single day of my life is worrying about podcast episodes and releasing. But whenever you release an episode, it's just one last thing you have to do, and it's just some sort of relief on your end.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to kick off to your podcast into a business, so can you take us back to the moment where you decided to turn your podcast hobby into a business? Because your podcast is basically well known in the area and you won some awards, nominations, and everything. So tell us more about that.
Yeah. So, to be honest, when I first started it, I didn't really have. I didn't think it would ever really turn into anything to begin with. And when I started it, I went into it, I'll say naive, but naive in a good way. And I always tell the story this way. If I knew how much work actually went into doing a podcast before I started it, I probably would have talked myself out of it. And I think that's the mistake a lot of people make, not just a podcast, and this can go for anything, but I'm not saying to jump into anything blind, but I'm saying if you have an interest in something, I think you should just go for it and try it. And of course, you have to do a little bit of research, a little bit of homework ahead of time. But I think just going into something with the idea of, hey, I'm just going to try this and not really worrying about how much work or how much effort it's really going to take. Because a lot of times once you realize how hard it actually is or will be, you may the odds are you'll likely talk yourself out of it. So like I said, when I first started it, I just went into it with just the idea of like, hey, this just might just be something cool and fun. I'm gonna try and see if it gains some traction. And if it doesn't, so what? And if it, you know, what either way, I just looked at it as, hey, I'm gonna have fun with it. I'm gonna meet a lot of cool people along the way, have a lot of good, interesting conversations, and just build a lot of really good long-term relationships, which have obviously served me well to this point. And I'm sure you can probably say the same thing about yourself after doing, you know, all that you've done as well. So yeah, so like I said, when I started, I had never, well, I actually didn't start it thinking like, oh, I'm gonna do this and make some money. It was just, I'm just gonna do this and just see what happens. So,
Mhm.
you know, like I said, I just once I got going, you know, a lot of people just became interested in it. And I had a couple people that approached me and said like, hey, can I advertise on the show and what might that cost? And at the time, I honestly, the first thing I said back to that person, I was like, really? I honestly don't know because I didn't really have the intention of doing that, at least not anytime soon. And I want to at least just build some trust and a little bit of momentum with the audience before throwing a bunch of ads in front of people. And there's nothing wrong with doing that either. And you know, now that I've been further along in this journey, we produce some other podcasts. We've you know monetized you know some of them from day one, which there's nothing wrong with that too. But like I said, for me, when I first started, I didn't want to just flood it with ads right away, and I want to be able to show and prove and show people that I have a you know that I can provide a value first. And then you know once I then felt comfortable enough, felt like, hey, okay, I think I'm providing some value here. Then you know once I got that first taste of you know somebody actually paying for sponsorship, aka advertising on the show, I looked at it and I was like, oh wow, I could actually make some money doing this. And I was like, all right, well, how do I do that 10 times over and make a lot more money? And not that it's all about the money, so you know, I don't want anyone to take that the wrong way. But at the same time, I never thought that this could possibly be a real career, especially I'll say, you know, somebody like you or I who are from the town that we are and you know, like I'm no Joe Rogan, right? And I'm sure obviously everybody recognizes that name. And you look at, you know, the amount of money that he's made and you think like, oh, I can never make it. I can never do it. You know, unless, you know, a lot of people say like, oh, unless you're Joe Rogan, you're never going to make money. Well, that's not really true. And I think, you know, if you just go into it with the right attitude and you just stick with it and keep trying, I think you could definitely make some, you know, obviously make money in it and make it a career if that's something you really want to do.
That's actually so true because when I started this 3 years ago, I literally started about a year into the pandemic. So it was literally early on the pandemic. So like once I started this, I literally did no research or nothing. Like I literally like didn't know what I was doing. And when oftentimes people ask me like, "Oh, how can I advertise on your show or something?" I'm thinking to myself like, I never even thought about it, honestly. Like that was something that I really didn't like consider, honestly, since I started it 3 years ago. I was like, the most important thing for me at that moment was to advertise other people rather than advertise other businesses, just because it's more easier to grow your podcasts and yourself rather than just advertise a business with no really not a lot of views. So that was kind of like the biggest thing for me at that time. And I didn't even start doing sponsorships until probably a few weeks ago. So I was like when I was thinking about it, I was like, I've been doing this for 3 years. Like, I feel like this is the right time. And one of my biggest missions, I'm sure for you as well, is supporting local businesses and getting their businesses out there. So that was kind of a big decision for me. And when I started thinking about it, I was like, I feel like this is the right time. Like, I kind of been pushing it off. Like, I really didn't want to do it, but I did want to do it. It's because I'm just like, I want to support this podcast and, you know, how much time I put into it. And no one's basically like Joe Rogan. Everyone's like, you only make money for Joe Rogan. I mean, I do have to admit, Joe Rogan is one of the best, if not the best podcasts out there. Like I listened to a bunch of his episodes. It's really amazing. Check it out if you never listened. But everyone can make something out of a podcast, no matter if you're Joe Rogan or not.
Right. Yep. Yeah. I think it just all depends on how much effort you put into it or want to put into it. And like I said, I mean, I honestly I just believe in the mindset of really anything is possible. I think it's just a matter of figuring it out. And there's nothing wrong with figuring it out as you go, too.
There's nothing bad about it. Everyone has a different journey. Not everyone's the same. Like, not every podcast is different. Of course, with me and you being from the 570, there's a lot of podcasts out there, like maybe like yourselves, getting to know the 570, Ryan Lucky's podcast, who I absolutely love. Like, it's like there's so many amazing podcasts out there, especially locally here. It's that not every podcast is going the same route as you are. No matter if you're in like a certain setup, microphones, interviews,
Yep.
like every podcast is now ready for a certain step in what they are right now.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I think everyone is unique in their own way. And like you said, no matter, a lot of people, there might be some people that like look at it like, oh, well, like they have similar shows. Well, I mean, the general concept might be similar, but at the same time, I think it's you as the host and the type of guests that you bring to the show and the types of conversations that you have that will set you apart from everyone else, even if, like I said, even if you're just 5 minutes down the road from somebody else.
I know. That's the best part because I know with us, we're probably like 15 to 20 minutes down the road from each other. But it's like with many other podcasts, they can live probably 5 minutes away and still do something like this. Like, it doesn't
Yep.
matter.
Yep.
And like to see the amount of community that's coming together, especially around this time of year, is really crazy to me. Like the amount of people that are doing amazing things. I'm still literally learning more about people every single day. And I'm
That's
sure it's the
great.
same for you as well. It's like it's really crazy to see how many people are stepping up and doing something.
Absolutely.
So to go to your podcast on the stacks, it literally has gained incredible traction. So what do you attribute to its success? Like how do you kind of take time out of your day to release episodes and get success in your podcast?
So I think it kind of sort of goes back to a little bit like what I just touched on before, but I think because when like I said, when I started it, I didn't have the intention of it ever making money, and I think sometimes now again, like obviously, anyone that's starting a business, you're going into business to make money. That's the point, right? But I think for me, because the way the unique way that I started out and my intention from the beginning, I wasn't looking to make $1 million off of it. And I think because I had that type of idea going into it, it enabled me to do it because I loved it, not because I was doing it for the money. And I think that's where I may have gone wrong in the past in my life is I got so hung up on trying to make money, trying to make a lot of money. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong with anything is strictly doing it for the money. And I think once you can kind of get that, of course we all need to make money, right? But
Mhm.
I think once you kind of are able to separate those two things and really do something that you love, something that you're good at, and it shows through your work, and then once that happens, I think then the money just becomes a byproduct of the great work that you're doing. And for me, I think the success of it, I think it's twofold or maybe threefold is that reason. I wasn't doing it, for the money. The money kind of sort of came after, but then also take a lot of time to engage with listeners, the audience, and then and guests. And I always just every week I just try to make it better. I don't mind constructive criticism, and I always ask everybody for feedback, and I always tell everybody, please, tell me the truth. Don't just tell me something just because you don't want to offend me. I said, I want to know what's good. I want to know what's bad. And I think, having that right mindset of just continually learning and, I'm not going to, even though I've been doing this for, several years, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know everything because I don't. And I think, having that right attitude of just continually learning, being a student of the game and again, just always having the attitude of just trying to make it better. like every week, every after every episode, whether, whether I'm a guest on somebody's show or whether I'm, obviously doing my own, like I constantly look back at my work and say to myself, like, okay, like how can I make it better next time? You might not be happy with a response or an answer or response that you gave or a question that you asked or whatever, but you can look back at your work, every single day and be like, okay, if I just make it a little bit better every single day, how much of an impact is that going to have on it? And when you really think about it, it actually will have a significant impact. So I think it's been a combination of all those different things of just, again, not doing it, for the money, engaging with the audience, aka like the customers, right? And just figuring out like what's going to keep driving the show forward, what's going to keep people engaged, and just constantly improving. And I think you just have that right attitude of just continually improving every single day, and I think that makes a world of difference.
It really has. And I have to ask, like, do you like looking back on your episodes so far, do you have an episode or a moment on a show where you're just like, why did I release this? Like, why did I ever record this? Like, did you ever have that sort of moment?
It's so funny you say that. There's been a lot of times where I would come home, from a recording, and I would record like I usually typically record just one a week, and there's so many instances of my wife, if she's watching or listening to this, she's gonna laugh her ass off because she knows exactly what I'm gonna say. But I would come home sometimes after a recording, and she obviously would know I had a recording that day. And I would come home and she'd be like, "Hey, how'd it go today?" I'd be like, "Ah, I sound like an idiot," or "Oh, I did this," or "Oh, I don't know. I just think the episode's like not that great." And and she goes, "Oh, you always say that." She goes, "But then when the episode comes out, you're like, oh my God, it's great. It's good. It's not like you thought it would be." But yeah, I mean, are there moments that, I wish I could have, said something different or better or like 100%, I mean, I think I think it's also just part of the process, though. I think a lot of people one of the things that I think people always find interesting about my show, I'm very open about how we do everything is pretty much just as if you watch almost any episode or listen to any episode that I've pretty much almost all of them that I've ever done, there's really been hardly anything ever edited out of them. Almost every episode, exactly as you are listening or watching it, is exactly how it was recorded. And I hardly ever cut things out, even if they're just like small little blunders or mistakes, because well, number one, you don't want to have to spend too much time editing it, but also I think it shows the human side of people, and I think there's nothing wrong with you fumbling over asking a question, or there's nothing wrong with even a guest fumbling over an answer, because I think it shows the realness of podcasting. I think that's what makes podcasting so unique and so different than I'll say like traditional media or just any other form of content online, is just having that realness, even though it's not live, right? But just knowing that you have the ability to change it and alter it, but you don't. I think it goes a long way because it shows people that you're willing to be vulnerable and just have a real, raw, and honest conversation, and that you're not sitting there trying to be perfect. Because I think we all get caught up in life in general, trying to always be perfect, whatever it is that we're doing. And I think there's nothing wrong with, sometimes just having a little blunder and just keeping it in there. Like I said, it shows the human side of things. And but yeah, but to go back to your question is, like I said, I would come home a lot of times and I would say I'd tell my wife like, "Oh, I don't know, I just didn't like that one. I don't know how, I don't think it's gonna be good." And then almost every single time when the episode comes out, then she's like, "Oh, see, it's fine. I told you so." And I'm like, "I know. I like we do this all the time. Like, and it's fine, But so yeah, like I said, has there been little moments? 100%. But when I look back on any of them, and I honestly can't really even remember like one specific one because that's how insignificant I think they actually are or were. But when I look back on it, it's just like it's all good.
Like I'm the same exact way. Like every time I record an episode, I'm always like, why did I say that? Like, why did I
We're
approach
always,
it
we're always
that
critiquing
way?
ourselves.
Like everyone does that to podcast hosts. Everyone just like thinks like, oh my gosh, like why did I say that or approach it that
Yeah.
way or phrase it? Like looking back on my early episodes of when I started, I wish I can actually delete them just because I didn't like it at all. Like I'm the type of person that hates to listen to me speak. Like I can't stand it. So whenever I hear someone playing it in my at my house or something, I'm just like, turn it off. Like you can play it when I'm not around. Feel free. It means so much, but not when I'm around. That's because I can't stand it.
Yeah.
Like even when I'm
Yeah.
editing an episode, I'm just like, I'm just phrasing out. Like, I just can't. But looking back, like everyone has a certain episode where they just think it's absolutely horrible. No matter if it's like amazing guest or what, everyone wishes they could phrase it or something different in that episode. And that's what editing is for and what growth is for. Everyone is not perfect. Not everyone's a president of the United States and hardcore. Like this is podcasting, it's for fun. You may get paid for it. That's great. I mean, it's a plus. Don't get me wrong. But you have to do it to love it. No matter if you're just doing it to get paid, not everything about podcasting you'll get paid for. Like, no matter what. I mean, to be completely honest, I just do this for the fun of it, no matter if I get paid for it or not. And I'm sure it's the same way for you. But the hard work and everything they put in is a plus, and it takes a lot of time to do and run a podcast. Like it's a lot, but it's also when you release an episode and meet people that you probably wouldn't get to meet if you didn't do this. It gets kind of the biggest reason why
Yeah.
I do it, but I'm sure it's the same way for you as well.
Oh, 100%. I was kind of reflecting on this like right before we started, actually. And it's funny you say that because it really is just about the journey. And, as much as, you may be disappointed some days, you have good days, you have bad days, and a lot of times it's, it could be a roller coaster, right? But I think when you look at it as just a whole, it's the journey and it's just doing it. I think that is a lot of times we get caught up in the end result and like the need to have like the success, whatever success may look like to anyone. But I think at the end of the day, when you look at it and look at, the body of work that you create, it's really just about the journey and enjoying the journey, even though it may have some ups and downs. And I think as long as you can enjoy the journey and not just focus on the end result, I think you'll be much happier.
Definitely. So to go back on your podcast, if anyone's wondering like what type of people you interview, can you give us some examples on the people you interviewed and like the way you do your interviews?
Yeah, so I'll say I've had the gamut of people. I feel like and I know this will probably change like in like a couple weeks as I'm booking new guests, right? But I always say I feel like there isn't a conversation that I pretty much haven't had at this point.
Mhm.
So like I said, I'll say over time my content it's evolved, of course, right? As the show has evolved and as I've evolved as a person, personally and professionally. But my guests, again, it's the range of guests. I've had everybody from UFC fighters to district attorneys, prosecutors, police officers, convicted murderers, drug dealers, everything in between. So, just a regular business person, entrepreneur, to content creators, to medical professionals, like literally anything and everything in between, musicians, I mean, you name it. And that's what I really like about it is the variety of the types of people and just and then the outlook and the types of conversations that they are able to bring to the table. I think is what I think what makes my show unique and what I really like about it is just that constantly having just very different and unique guests and maybe some conversations that may push the boundaries and maybe they might be the types of conversations that most people would be afraid to have or afraid to have with that type of person. I can't tell you how many times uh, I'll give you a perfect example. It was probably a few months back, maybe several months ago at this point. I forget the episode number, but I had a gentleman on who he was a convicted murderer and he spent, very long time in prison. And I had him on the show. I think he was like 45 or 50 days out of jail, obviously on parole. And the first time I told like a few people close to me that I was having this person on, they're like, "What are you freaking crazy?" And I'm like, why? What's the big deal? They're like, aren't you afraid? I'm like, afraid of what? And they're like, well, he's a murderer. I'm like, well, so what? I'm
Like
like,
that might be his past. Who knows what he is right
yeah,
now? Like
yeah.
you
And
might
it's
just
just
see him
like,
passing.
like when you look at that, or even like a celebrity type person, like, oh, like were you nervous and this, that? I'm like, yeah, maybe a little bit, of course. I'm not gonna sit here and say like I wasn't, but at the same time, I think when you just look at somebody as a person and as a human being and just treat them that way, because that's how everybody wants to be treated. You could
Mhm.
be the biggest celebrity in the world, but people just want to be treated as people. And when you do that and you put that whole celebrity thing aside or whatever status they have, whether they're just very wealthy or whether they are a celebrity or both. But when you put that aside and just, really just get down to the nuts and bolts of it, just have a conversation, just treat people like people, it's really it's not that big of a deal. And I think, I guess obviously for people that haven't done it like me or like you, it's hard for people to comprehend, that being, having these types of conversations with these types of people. But again, I think just having that variety of people, and just being an open book. Like I just like to have conversations really, again, I'll pretty much talk about almost anything and everything. And I think that's different because not a lot of people are willing to do that.
I know. Like every episode that I do, it always depends, but it's okay to be nervous for an episode. No matter if it's someone big and wealthy or if it's a gentleman, for example, or what type of person is. Like everyone is dealing with emotions and interviewing people differently. And like I experienced being nervous for interviews millions of times, and it's okay. But sometimes I had to realize like these people that I'm talking to right now in this present moment are actual people. Like even though they might do tons of work, amazing things, might have a lot of money, they're still the same people we are just because even though they might have a lot of name to them or money, they're still the exact same person that we are no matter what. And I'm sure it's the same for you as well. And that's something that I kind of have to tell myself all the time is that they're the same people we are. Just they might have more name than maybe we are.
Right. Yep, absolutely.
So the last thing I have for you is like, what's next for you and your career?
Ooh, what's next? That's a big one. I think I don't know. There's a lot that I'm interested in. Obviously, I'm going to continue to build out on the stacks as a premier new media brands. Not only to create impactful content and help empower individuals and business owners, entrepreneurs to amplify their voice and scale their influence, but also just to make an impact and just to keep trying. I think that's the biggest thing. I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. Uh, is just constantly trying and showing up. And I don't think there is any real end goal, right? Like, because a lot of times when we get to that goal, once I'm not saying don't set goals, for sure, 100% set goals, but I think when we put something up on a pedestal, like, oh, once I get to this level, this place, this thing, or I buy that thing, or get this thing, or I get that amount of money, you kind of sort of, I don't want to say you set yourself up for failure, but you set yourself up, once you achieve that, you may become complacent. So I think, I just would like to kind of get the message out there of just like, just keep trying. And there is no fail or succeed. I think it's just trying. And I think, and again, like I said earlier, of the journey of just, continuing on the journey and enjoying the journey for what it is. But ultimately, obviously I see myself, building out a bigger team, building out more content, producing other shows, and working with people that I feel align with me and my values and what I'm trying to do and we're trying to do. And I think quality content I think is one of the other big things. I think a lot of people tend to maybe pump out content just for the sake of pumping out content, and maybe there's a different strategy for that too. I tend to lean more on the side of quality over quantity. I'd
Mhm.
rather I'd rather have more quality conversations than just pump out twice the amount of content just for the sake of doing it. I think the type of content that you're doing can and will have an impact, and that's kind of goes with like I said, having the quality over the quantity. So I think, like I said, it's just staying the course even when there's plenty of lows, because there's definitely a lot of lows. There's going to be a lot of lows, and even once you get to that top level, whatever it is that you think that you were going after, whatever, you're still going to experience the highs and lows, no matter what, even when you get to where you think you're going to be. So again, I think it's just continuing along this journey and just building, making it into something bigger than myself. I think that's kind of always been, the attitude that I've had is just building a community and just building really just a community of people around me that includes guests, the audience, and people that are able to just resonate with the content and just have fun while you're doing it. And obviously, hopefully, you love what you're doing, and I love what I do. So, just continuing to do what I love to do. And if at some point something changes where I feel like, hey, I don't know if I really love this anymore, well, you don't have to give the whole thing up. You can always, change direction, change course a little bit, maybe try to do something a little bit different. But yeah, I mean, I have interest in building out more, getting more into real estate as an investor. Some of those things interest me as well. But again, I think just having fun and having a life of freedom and not being tied to just any one thing. I think as an entrepreneur, I think that's what we all really enjoy about being entrepreneurs is the freedom of time and the freedom of being able to do what we want to do when we want to do it, and with who and when and where and why and all that. So that's it. I think a combination of all those things. And like I said, not that I don't have an end goal, but I think I just have the mindset now of just continuing on this journey and trusting the process.
Absolutely. That's basically everything I was actually going to say. So you basically covered it all for me. But that is such a perfect way to wrap up this episode. I love getting to film this episode with you. I'm so glad we were able to finally actually connect. It was great to have you on and finally getting to meet you. The work that you are doing is literally absolutely amazing, and keep up the great work. I know people are definitely talking about it, so I really glad we're able to have this conversation and really appreciate you coming on and taking the time to chat with us.
Yeah, Kylie. Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep up the great work. Like I said, it's you're doing a lot, which is very incredible. And if there's anything I could ever do to help you, just please know that the door is always open, and I'd be happy to help you in any way that I can.
Thank you. That means so much, and that's the same for you as well. Hope everyone enjoyed this episode. Make sure to like, subscribe, and review, and I'll see you guys next week.